Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is due at the White House later today for talks with U.S. President Joe Biden. He'll hold a separate meeting with presidential hopeful Kamala Harris. Zelenskyy is in Washington to rally support for his country's fight against Russia. During a speech to the UN General Assembly, he said the war would only end with victory on the battlefield or if Moscow accepts his government's peace plan. He urged leaders to keep the war in Ukraine a top priority. Well, joining us now from Kyiv is DW's Matthias Böllinger, and from Bonn we have our Roman Goncharenko from DW's Eastern Europe service. Good to see you both. Matthias, President Zelenskyy is about to meet with Joe Biden at the White House. He's due to present his much-vaunted victory plan for Ukraine. What are you hearing about that?
He has said before that the aim of this victory plan is to make bring Ukraine in a strong position so that either they can militarily advance or get a stronger hand in possible negotiations to force Russia to negotiate finally, to negotiate their retreat from Ukraine. That's what Ukraine aims at. What it contains in detail is, of course, not known, but it's expected to contain some of Ukraine's demands that are pretty much on the table for a long time, using long-range missiles on Russian territory to disrupt Russian logistics, for example, possibly additional weapons systems. There's also expected to be a longer-term strategy, a deterrence strategy, which will most likely be closely associated with Ukraine's accession to NATO and the speed of this accession to NATO. It's not really expected, I'm hearing, that this will contain a completely new demand. It's a redesign of Ukraine's demands that's coming now ahead of the elections in the US to give the West another push to support Ukraine further.
Roman, you've been watching this back and forth between Russia and Ukraine going on and on. How do you think Russia will react to this plan?
Well, as Matthias has absolutely correctly pointed out, the basic of this plan is Ukraine wants to be put in a stronger position to negotiate with Russia. Not now, because it's too weak at the moment. Russia has much more weapons, many more soldiers, so it is not ready to negotiate yet. There has been a response from the spokesperson of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, who said it would be a fatal mistake to believe that Russia can be forced to negotiate, can be forced to peace. So this is no surprise. Russia will not probably participate in the second peace conference that Ukraine is trying to organize for November. One of the points in that plan by President Zelenskyy is that Ukraine would like to have a much more specific or accelerated access to NATO membership. Of course, Russia is against it. This was the Russian argument when it invaded Ukraine in 2022. So nothing unexpected there. The biggest response, or the loudest response, is probably the announcement by President Putin to reconsider Russian nuclear doctrine.
Exactly. And we do have a soundbite from Vladimir Putin on that, about revising the nuclear doctrine. Apparently, the idea is to lower the threshold for using nuclear weapons. Here's what President Putin had to say.
We reserve the right to use nuclear weapons in the event of aggression against Russia and Belarus as a member of the Union state. All these issues have been agreed upon with the Belarusian side, with the President of Belarus. That includes if the enemy, using conventional weapons, creates a critical threat to our sovereignty.
Roman, what do you make of these comments? Is Putin trying to preempt Zelenskyy's trip to the White House with this warning?
President Biden, don't do it. Don't support Zelenskyy's plan. Don't give him that permission to strike military targets deep inside Russia with Western weapons. So it's a message for Biden. It's also a message for America's allies. First of all, United Kingdom and France, who are supplying Ukraine with those long-range missiles. And it's been expected for some time. Russia has been signaling for months now that it is going to reconsider its nuclear doctrine, lowering the threshold. There were it has to do with Russia is not happy how its nuclear saber rattling is working. So it is deterring, in a way, the West from giving Ukraine from all what it wants. It's countries like what we've been talking about, all those missiles, Ukraine is not getting them. But on the other hand, certain red lines have been crossed for Moscow, like F-16s, like Patriot systems, like modern Western tanks, and things like that. So Russia is not happy, and it has been growing, this frustration in Moscow. A year ago, one of the famous Russian analysts, who is considered to be one of the hawks, Mr. Karaganov, said that Russia should reconsider its nuclear doctrine, lower the threshold, because the West is not hearing. And this is what is happening now, basically.
Matthias, the nuclear specter has been raised repeatedly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine 2.5 years ago. How is this latest move going down in Kyiv?
It's not making headlines here, and that is precisely because you have said it. It's not the first time that Putin has used nuclear threat in the case of ahead of an important decision by the West of allowing Ukraine or giving Ukraine new weapon systems. Ukrainians have pretty much come to the conclusion, most Ukrainians, that Putin's red lines aren't really red lines. They are scare tactics, but he rarely follows up on them. It's not that people don't think that Putin would be capable of doing such a thing, of using nuclear weapons on Ukraine or on other countries, but they have come to the conclusion that these red lines are not really what would trigger such a response.
DW correspondent Matthias Brunninger there in Kyiv, and Roman Goncharenko of DW's Eastern European Service. Thank you very much.